Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Wherever you are, I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Thank you very much indeed for joining today's webinar. And today we are talking about Portugal. My name's Grant Reynolds. I'm at IP Global here in Hong Kong. And I'm delighted to be joined by some great guests today. I have Stacey Roja, who's our investment manager here in Hong Kong. Stacey, welcome.
Thank you very much, Grant.
How are you?
Good, thanks. Yourself?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Yeah, very well. Also in Dubai, we have from Arish Capital, we have Rakesh Majititha and Roselia, who are presenting on the Golden Visa. So Rakesh, Roselia, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Thank you, Grant.
You're very welcome. How are you both over there?
Good, good, good. We're surviving the heat at the moment. It's 44 degrees outside, so we're surviving.
I know it's a very hot time of year over there. I've got a good friend of mine. He said it's baking, but hopefully cools down quite soon.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So first of all, let me give you a little bit of background to IP Global. So if we go on to the into the first slide, so a little bit of background to IP Global. We are a research-driven end-to-end property investment company. We have transacted over $3.2 billion of property since we set up. From my side, I've been involved in the business since 2006, helping many clients make investments into a variety of countries globally. We do everything from initial research and due diligence to introduction to lawyers. We help find the tenants, and we also offer the mortgaging opportunity. So it's very much an end-to-end business model. Highlighted on the screen here are our main markets of the UK, Germany, and of course today we'll be talking about Portugal and the main cities of Lisbon, the capital, and Porto, which is very much the second city. Next slide, please. So there's a great picture of Portugal. I remember it well from my trip last year. That's Porto. Great country. It's done so well to recover post the financial crisis. And really presents some good opportunities for our investors. So let me just go into the next slide and just provide a high-level overview. So population 10.5 million, average life expectancy around about 81 years old. Pretty good considering it's got a great climate, great way of life, super temperature. Cost of living is very cheap. Stable, strong government. Government's done a great job in Portugal over the last number of years. Portuguese is the fifth most spoken language globally. Over 300 million people speak Portuguese, but also English is widely spoken. And it's very, very good from a business perspective. I can do business in Portugal like I could here in Hong Kong or Singapore. Very, very easy to do. It's a peaceful country, fourth most peaceful country in the world, and 12th best in terms of health. So really, really good country in terms of those factors. And just highlighted there is the capital, which sits on the west coast of the country. Next slide, please. So it's good to actually provide a little bit of background, of course, to COVID-19 and how Portugal has dealt with that. I think what we can clearly say is they've dealt with it extremely well. The first case came up on the 2nd of March. But literally 8 weeks later, by the 2nd of May, Portugal was coming out of the COVID crisis. Some of the reasons why that was very good governance at the outset, but also from the point of view that if you go back to around about 2015, they invested heavily in their healthcare in terms of funds, in terms of personnel. And during the crisis, they managed to deal with the strain on the health service very, very well indeed. And in fact, it's chalk and cheese when you look at the sad amount of deaths in neighbouring Spain, over 30,000 versus Portugal, which was around about 1,500. They dealt with it incredibly well. Post the crisis, there's been a 10 billion euro stimulus package, and that's really started to get the country responding, get the country up and running again. And clearly that has brought some confidence, and we've seen that confidence reflected in our investors looking to invest in Portugal over the last couple of months. Next slide, please. Right, so at this point, I'm going to hand over to Stacey, who's going to give a quick overview of the main two cities of Lisbon and Porto. Over to you, Stacey.
Perfect, thanks, Grant. Try and make it as quick as possible.
Great, good stuff.
Yeah, as Grant said, it's obviously great how Portugal have reacted and responded so well to the pandemic, and they really have. We've started to see the economy open up both domestically and internationally. Tourists can now visit Portugal not visa-free, quarantine-free, which is great. So I'm going to be touching on two of the major cities in Portugal. We've got Lisbon as the capital city, and then Porto. IP Global have actually invested in both these cities in the last 2 years. We see a lot of investment potential going forward, and they're also most of the popular locations for the Golden Visa. So let's chat about Lisbon first. So Lisbon is the business and economic hub of Portugal. It has over a quarter of Portugal's population, but generates more than a third of its national GDP. So the economic climate in Lisbon, unfortunately, is very different to what it was six months ago, as with every city actually across the globe right now. But Lisbon is forecast to hold up slightly better than a lot of its neighbouring European cities. It's expected to contract 8.8% this year. Obviously, the large contraction mainly due to its reliance on tourism. But then if you look at other European countries, you've got Barcelona, which is expected to contract 10%, and Paris, which is expected to contract up to 11%. And now that the government is slowly starting to ease restrictions and open up the economy, it is expected that the GDP will surpass its pre-crisis levels by 2022 already. Unemployment is also following a similar suit to the GDP growth. Lisbon actually suffered extremely harshly post GFC. They lost a lot of talented labor, a lot of skilled workers that went and looked for other opportunities elsewhere in Europe. Over the last couple of years, they've really put a lot of effort and a lot of investment into investing into jobs and opportunities and full-time contracts for citizens of Portugal. And it's evident in the unemployment rate reaching a 17-year low in 2019 at 7.2%. Because of the pandemic, it is expected to rise this year to 9.4%, but by 2022 is expected to be down to 7.1% again. The startup scene in Lisbon is also developing and growing extremely fast. It's not quite yet at the levels of the European giants like Paris and Berlin and London, but it really is establishing itself to become the tech capital of Southern Europe. If we look at the investment happening over the last year, $105 million of venture capital was invested in the last year. If we compare that to the last 10 years, 135 million was invested. So that's 13.5 million over the last 10 years compared to 105 million in the last year. So companies really are honing in on Lisbon. They're seeing the potential and really are investing in the city. Lisbon also hosts the annual Web Summit, which is the largest technology event in the world. And this really has put Lisbon on the radar and established it as a startup hub. So not only those factors, but just in general, Lisbon is a great place to live. I've been there a number of times, and its climate is incredible. It has an average temperature of 70 degrees Celsius across the year. I mean, who wouldn't want to live there? It's rich in culture. It has a low cost of living compared to other major European cities. It has a very high quality of life. It's also a very small city, so it's very easy to get around. They have good infrastructure. It's easy to walk places. You can jump on a bike or a scooter, and all of this is extremely affordable. So people are moving there to work and to live and to study, because post-COVID, these are the factors that Lisbon offers are really the factors that people are going to look for in places that they want to live and settle in the future. And then just quickly touching on the real estate market of Lisbon, over the last 10 years, property prices have increased by nearly 100%. This is on par with the growth of other cities across Europe, though it's important to remember that Lisbon comes from a much smaller base. So even though you see this growth previously in the prices, there's still a lot of price growth still to be had in the future because it's come from such a low base. Lisbon also has one of the strongest forecasts for this year, where property prices will increase, as well as for the next 5 years. Next slide. Perfect. So moving on to Lisbon's second city, and really a thriving city in its own right. It's come into the radar investors in the last few years and rivaled Lisbon in a few things. So it's the second city of Portugal, home to 2.3 million people, and accounts for just under a third of Portugal's GVA. Similar story also to Lisbon. The Porto economy really suffered post-financial crisis, and it took a while for it to get going and start growing again. And a lot of that is part due to its leader, Rui Moreira, who's a very business-minded and business-centric leader of Porto. And he's really made efforts to diversify the Porto economy, so less reliant on port wine and manufacturing and tourism, and really diversify the economy. And this can be seen, and his efforts can be seen in the GDP growth over the last couple of years. In 2019, Porto experienced 3.3% GDP growth, and this was expected to continue in the foreseeable future until the global pandemic hit. So it is expected to contract this year by over 8%, again, also because of its reliance on tourism as well as exports. But as soon as everything starts opening up again, and people both domestically and internationally, it will rebound 6% in 2021 and then 4% in 2022. Unemployment also following a similar trend. A lot of investment and effort was put into bringing down the unemployment rate over the last couple of years. And by diversifying the economy, they've also really created a lot more opportunities in Porto and made a lot more stable jobs for their citizens, and put in a lot of opportunities to attract people who left post the GFC to come back to Porto and Portugal. And I mean, the stats just sort of say it all. It's had an unemployment rate of 17% in 2015. That's just 5 years ago, and it's now at 7.3%. Again, unfortunately, it will rise due to COVID to 9.7% in 2020, but by 2024, it will be below 7% again, and just remain on that sort of downward trajectory towards the future. The city is also growing a digital ecosystem and very much trying to rival Lisbon. The city is attracting foreign investment. In 2018, it actually broke its own FDI record with a 15-year high in investment. It gained $210 million in FDI in 2018, and that was in sectors outside of tourism and real estate. It accounted for 53% of the entire investment for FDI in Portugal for that year, as well as over 50% of the new jobs created for that year. It's got a numerous amount of accolades over the last years, the best startup friendly city in Europe in 2018, as well as Europe's third fastest growing tech hub. It's also a university city. It has the highest student population in Portugal. It's home to the University of Porto, which is Portugal's largest university, as well as the Polytechnic University of Porto. And among these two, as well as a few other universities and tertiary education colleges, they have 72,000 students. So very big student population in Porto. And one of the very interesting facts we came across when we were looking at the student population was that for all these students, there's only 1,250 university beds available. So that's 1.7% of students actually have dedicated university housing for them. So this really is driving the rental and the rental demand in Porto, and those students aren't going anywhere. You know, they're going to stay in Porto, and that's just going to continue to drive the rental demand in the future. And then just touching a bit more on the housing, the real estate market, it's again very sort of similar to Lisbon. The last 5 years, it's property prices have doubled, so since 2014. But again, very, very important to note that it comes from an extremely low base compared to a lot of other European cities. Pre-2011, Porto actually experienced negative price growth. So coming from that and from a low base, you know, there's been a lot of growth in the past, but there's only space to grow in the future. And we do think there's a lot of growth to be had, both in Porto as well as Lisbon.
Great, thanks, Stacey. And just on those last points, I mean, when you think about how far Porto and Lisbon have come over the last sort of 10 to 12 years post-financial crisis, and how well they are geared up for, you know, technology in this new world, that certainly bodes well for the future of those two cities.
No, for sure, yeah. I mean, the quality of life and the affordability of these cities is just attracting more and more people.
Yes, yeah, fantastic. Okay, great. Thanks very much indeed for that, Stacey. So now we're going to move over to Rakesh in Dubai, who's going to provide an overview of the Golden Visa opportunity. So this is an opportunity to ultimately get passporting rights in Portugal, and there's many different drivers of this interest right now, and Rakesh is going to explain more. So over to you, Rakesh, and thanks for joining today.
Okay, thank you again, Stacey and Grant. Just a brief introduction to Irish Capital Partners, where I am a partner. We are primarily real estate investors and developers. We've been established now for coming up to 10 years. And for the last 3.5 years, we very much bought into the investment hypothesis of Portugal. As Stacey touched upon, we like the robustness of the government, we like the macroeconomics of the country, and we feel that the diversity in the economy very much supports real estate investing. So over the last 18 months or so, we've seen a huge demand from buyers that are looking for, firstly, a smart investment. Smart because they're looking for the typical things like yield, capital growth, exit liquidity. But as well as it wanting a smart investment, buyers' aspirations are also keeping in mind things like a plan B, such as residency or citizenship prospects. And this is where really Portugal's hugely popular Golden Visa program comes to life. And we wanted to set out for you in a little bit of detail some specifics about the program. And the first starting point is, what is it? Well, it is both a residency and a citizenship investment program, meaning that if you are to purchase a qualifying property, then you can apply for a residency initially and then later on for citizenship/passport. The main question that we always get asked at this point, well, does it work? Is one of the standard questions that we get. And I think that the answer to that question is an emphatic yes. And the main reason why we can say that is because we have evidence to support that answer. And this slide really says quite a bit about the program. The program was launched in 2012, was hugely popular. You can see on the bottom right-hand side that it's attracted over 5 billion of investment. That's people investing from outside of Portugal into Portugal via one of these Golden Visa programs, and 5 billion has been invested to date. That has resulted in over 8,000 residency permits being issued to individual investors. And then when you include their family members, a further 14,000 residency permits have been issued. So in total, in excess of 22,000 residency permits have been issued. And I think that very much answers this question of proof of concept and the popularity of the regime itself. Now, we mentioned that the investors desire not only a smart investment, but also something that gives them this plan B security. And of course, I think there are many drivers that people want to have a plan B, particularly at the moment. There's various dislocations in the world, whether it's Lebanon or Belarus, but other people and a lot of our buyers are coming from it from a perspective of planning for their children's education, because the Golden Visa does in fact make a lot of economic sense when you look at sending your children overseas into Europe in terms of university fees. And we thought we'd play for you a very quick explainer video which demonstrates the power of the golden visa vis-a-vis sort of children's education. So we can play the video, that'd be great.
Did you know non-European students pay more than 10 times the tuition fees than European citizens for the same education degree in Europe? Yes, you heard me right. Brandon from Ireland pays €3,000 tuition fees per year, while John pays €45,000, both studying medicine in Dublin. Even more concerning, John, as a non-EU citizen, may not be able to live and work in Europe after graduating. So, as parents, what can we do? Easy. Have you heard about the Portuguese Golden Visa program? 1. Invest in an eligible property for as low as €350,000. 2. Obtain your Portuguese residency card. 3. Spend as little as 7 days a year in Portugal for 5 years. 4. Apply for you and your family's citizenship to acquire a lifetime of European rights and benefits. Hurry up and don't miss out on this limited window of opportunity.
So again, this is just going through some of the metrics around the golden visa. And again, most of the numbers that we're quoting here are actually government released statistics, so they can be independently verified. I think the key thing on this slide is that notwithstanding the pandemic, and I think partly because of the way Portugal has handled the COVID crisis in terms of healthcare, etc., the number of applications for golden visa continues to carry on, and indeed we've had many pre-approvals for people's investors golden visa in the last sort of 3 to 4 weeks. So these are investors that only invested in March. So the immigration authorities continue to work throughout this period as well. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this slide is really to demonstrate part of the flexibility and the popularity of Portugal's golden visa program, because at the end of the 5 years, an investor can make a choice as to what he wants to do. He can either move to permanent residency, which will give him permanent access to Portugal as a resident, or alternatively, he can elect for citizenship, which typically means getting a passport. Now, the reason why this distinction is different is because there are many overseas buyers whose home countries do not allow for dual citizenship. Portugal doesn't have any restrictions on that front, so Portugal does allow its citizens to have dual passports, but there are some countries that restrict that. So if you are coming from one of those countries, then Portugal offers this flexibility that at the end of the 5 years, you don't have to apply for a passport, you can just convert it to permanent residency. Again, something noteworthy for people coming from certain jurisdictions. Next slide, please. Now, the idea of this slide is to talk you through the various flavors, if you like, of the golden visa regime and the manner in which it's offered. And here we've put side by side two of the most popular regimes under which, you know, this in excess of this 5 billion of investment has come through. And these two schemes are most commonly referred to as the GV Golden Visa 500k scheme or the GV 350k scheme. Now, I think just an important highlight to start with before we go through the line by line compare and contrast, I think the key point for people to understand is that at the end of this process, whichever scheme you go down, the end point is the same, i.e. the golden visa benefits are the same for you, for your families, etc. There's zero difference in the golden visa itself. The only difference is the manner in which you achieve that golden visa. So if we look at the two schemes and some of the highlighting items that are important, the first one is the minimum investment amount. As the name suggests, the minimum investment for the GB 500k scheme is 500,000, and similarly for the GB 350k scheme, it's 350,000. Now, what does that in fact mean? And this is where the eligible types of property comes into play, because in reality, under the 500,000 investment scheme, so long as you invest at least 500,000, then any property investment would qualify you for being eligible for the golden visa. However, under the 350,000 golden visa regime, you can't just invest 350,000 in any property and then expect to be eligible for the golden visa. In fact, the building itself that you invest in needs to be eligible. The zone that the building sits in needs to be eligible. From our perspective, from Arish's perspective, we specialize very much in the 350k scheme. We spend a lot of time trying to ensure that we find the right buildings that qualify for all these conditions. But also we focus a lot of our attention in finding properties that are city centre based. And once we have found a property that qualifies in a city centre, we do find that it sells very well. The other element that can be different in the GV 500k scheme versus the 350k scheme, and this is important to some of our international investors where perhaps the legal regime regarding property ownership isn't entirely clear. In Portugal, there is an official land registry, so you do become a title deed holder. However, under the GV 500k scheme investment, typically you would only get your title once the property is built, because these are typically off-plan properties. However, under the GV 350k scheme, because it's an existing building, by definition the building exists, and therefore you get your title deed straight away. Again, this is sometimes attractive for certain types of international investors who like to have a title deed straight away. So if I flip through to the next slide, let me just try and summarize here. We have quite a wide range of investors in it. It's close to something like 100 investors now. I would class most of our buyers as being quote unquote smart money, in the sense that they are bankers, lawyers, doctors, dentists who think about their investment decisions properly, something that I actually like. And these are some of the reasons that they've elected for our developments that fall under the 350k scheme. I think the first one is really the price point. Obviously, particularly at the moment, price is a key component, and being able to invest in a 350,000 scheme investment is attractive for a lot of people. On top of that, as I already mentioned, we have a lot of our investments focused on city centre locations. People find that attractive because it offers yield in terms of rentability, etc., but also better prospects for capital growth. And also at some point you may want to sell your investment, and being in a city centre obviously helps that liquidity on exit. These projects that we are going to be showcasing in a moment do qualify for the Golden Visa scheme. As I mentioned, we're quite forensic in trying to find these buildings that qualify. And at the moment, we're seeing pre-approvals for some of our buyers taking around 6 to 8 weeks, which again adds a lot of comfort for buyers internationally, that they're going through the process and they get that nod, if you like, from the immigration authorities that they've been pre-approved for the visa. And you don't incidentally have to travel to Portugal for that pre-approval process. And I think just the last 2 points I want to touch upon is that because we're quite forensic in our approach in finding these buildings, we are primarily a real estate investor and developer, but through these developments, we've become intimately involved in the detail of the Golden Visa process. We know how important it can be to many of our investors and buyers. So because we've done all our due diligence, we do offer a buyback clause within our purchase contracts that if, for whatever reason, the Golden Visa is denied because of the nature of the property, then we would repurchase back from the investors. So hopefully that gives you or demonstrates the confidence we have in our developments. And then lastly, ties back to our experience really. In the last 18 months to 2 years, we have now successfully navigating in excess of 70 purchases through the Golden Visa pre-approval process. So again, I think that's a good metric to know in terms of when you are investing in these types of investments, wanting not just a smart investment, but also because you're attracted to the Golden Visa. So hopefully that gives you all a whistle-stop tour of the Golden Visa regime. I'm now going to hand you over to another partner of mine at Arish Capital, who's going to be talking you through some of our developments in Porto city centre, which do qualify obviously for the Golden Visa. So over to you, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reg. And hi, everyone. So now we are moving to the last part of the presentation, and I will be talking about Visa Gardens project. But before that, I would like to start off with a short video that will hopefully give you a good overview. Okay, so I hope that the video gave you a bit of understanding about the uniqueness and the refined design of the project. And now what I will do is to take you through some of the other key details. Baixa Garden is located in downtown Porto in a very prime location, which is Baixa Historic Zone. And this is the hottest zone in every real estate heat map. More specifically, is just across a beautiful city landmark, which is the University of Law. It's actually all the units that are facing the front facade are overlooking the university. It's because of the unique design and the location is destined to be an iconic development. The units type are studios and one bedroom, and the prices range from 350,000 euros to 429,000. It has very high quality finishes, and this is actually something common to all our projects. It's a company standard to spend a lot of time and effort on the concept design and finishing. And I would like you to think about Baixa Gardens as an oasis in the city. So while it's within minutes away of every entertainment and cultural spot of the city, it has been designed to be a serene scape with its botanical garden and the greenery theme. The completion is in Q4 2021, and it is a freehold and full ownership property, which gives complete control to its owner. It has a beautiful private landscape garden, which you saw in the video. It's 600 square meters and is very rare to find in downtown. So it's very precious for both owners and potential tenants. And it gives, and of course, it's because of the beautiful weather of Porto, so you can use the garden throughout the year. As Rack mentioned, it entitles for the 350 reduced scheme investment program. And as last key aspect, I will say that we offer a 4% fixed rent for the first year to the buyers, and this gives them enough time to become familiarized with the rental market and the local property manager. Well, with all this said, and as you know, real estate is all about location. So Grant and Stacey have very well covered Portugal and the country macroeconomics, as well as the city of Porto. And now my objective is to cover the micro-location specifics. Baixa Gardens is located only 10 minutes walking to Avenida dos Aliados, which is the artery, the major artery of the historic city center. In this street, you can find the city hall, which is this beautiful building that's you see in the slide, but also the Central Bank of Portugal, the office in Porto, and the head office of many European banks. You find also here the luxury city hotels like Intercontinental or Monumental Hotel. And what to say, and this probably illustrates further the preeminence of the location, that Monumental Hotel was traded in 2018 for 500,000 euros per key, which was the highest price per room that Portugal had on record thus far. Moving forward to the next slide, there is key aspect to mention, which is the transportation and accessibility. And Baixa Garden is only minutes away from the central station, which takes you to any spot of the city, direct line, including the airport, which is only 40 minutes away, and this is door to door. And finally, if we go at the last slide, the purpose of this slide is to demonstrate the central location. And it is, if you see on the right of the project, we see the touristic area. On the left-hand side, we see the business district, and just across the street, the university. And why is so important the central location? Well, obviously, it supports the yield proposition. So you have three possibilities for rental: the tourist market, the university market, and the young professionals from the business district. So that deals with the yield prospect. But similarly, our investors have in mind two other things. One is the capital growth, and the other one, the exit liquidity. In terms of the exit liquidity, I think that is supported by the same factors that the yield, and this is that given the central location, it generally have a greater demand, but also along the type of units, which are one bedroom and studios, it's always can have a higher liquidity in any event. In terms of capital growth, Grant covered the general market position in Portugal, which is very positive. But I would like to add two other facts that are actually quite meaningful in terms of micro-location. Yes, in the same street of Baisa Gardens, there is boutique luxury hotel, spa and public gardens to be developed on a plot of 19,000 square meters. And this is just 100 meters away from Baisa Gardens. In addition to this, only minutes away, there is already an ongoing refurbishment project, which is a patrimony protected building, Mercado Bojão. And this is to be converted into a gastro cafe market, and it has a 25 million euros public budget deployed. So I trust this information that we have shared with you reinforce why we are very confident and excited with this investment opportunity, and which not only will grant you and your family the residency rights, but also secure and stable and attractive return. So here we'll pass back over to Grant. Thank you for your time and interest. Over to you, Grant. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you, Rosalia. That was a really good overview of the project in Porto. Clearly a great location in a prime part of the city. Now we're going to hand over to Stacey, who's going to actually reflect on our opportunity in Lisbon. It's the 500,000 new build opportunity. Of course, we've both been to see this project over the last year or so, which is in a fantastic spot also, with amazing views over the River Tagus that we've both seen. Yeah. So I don't want to steal any more of Stacey's thunder. Over to you for a quick overview.
Perfect, thanks, Grant. So yeah, as Rakesh covered earlier, there's obviously two opportunities for the Golden Visa, the 350K, which is for refurbishments, and then the 500K, which can cover refurbishments or new build. So we like to have options, as with everyone does. So we've got this option for the 500K Golden Visa opportunity in Lisbon. So it's located in the most incredible location, I would say. As Grant said, we've both been there, and it's absolutely stunning. It's in the district of Graça, which is just two steps away from Alfama, and it's located on one of the highest hills in Lisbon. It's the units on that side of the building you can see to the right have panoramic views over Lisbon city centre, as well as over the River Tagus, the Pantheon, and the São Jorge Castle. So really beautiful, beautiful, uninterrupted views out as far as the eye can see. And as I mentioned, it is located in Graça district of Lisbon, which is one of the most traditional districts in the city. It has the traditional windy cobbled road, the windy cobbled small roads. It has your traditional Portuguese bakeries and cafes, your boutique shops, but then mixed amongst that, you have all your modern sort of amenities the young workers and young professionals look for. So your cool breakfast spots, your cafes, your restaurants. So you really are getting this perfect fusion of old and new in this neighborhood, which sits just outside the city center. If we look at the actual development, it consists of 35 apartments. So they range from 1 to 3 bed units. They are well-sized units with beautiful open plan arrangements. They've got terraces with these views. They come with car parking spaces, with storage, and then we also have the communal garden, which sits out front, which tenants, every tenant can use. Very high spec, very high quality finishes, and just generally very, very well done and very well built. As Grant said, we've both been to the building and stood on those balconies, stood in those apartments, and it really is something impressive. Completion is due fairly soon for October this year. So October, November will be practical completion. So obviously no worries having to wait for that practical completion to happen for your Golden Visa opportunity. We will be offering a 5.5% 2-year rental guarantee. We understand that things are difficult now, things are uncertain, people aren't sure what's going to happen. And, you know, this just gives our clients some sort of comfort that they know for the next 2 years, they have this constant income stream and this guaranteed rental income. And then just moving on to the next slide. Perfect. So just looking at the micro location a bit of Bella Vista, I mentioned it's in Graça district, which is just a 2-minute walk from Alfama, so east side of the city. If you go down south, you're in Lisbon city centre, the Santa Catarina, Baixa area, in a 10-minute drive. There you have, again, a variety of restaurants, cafes, shops. You have your high street retail there, so your Zara, Topshop, although that sort of shopping district. And then if you go directly west, also about just a 10-minute drive, you get Avenue Liberdade. So that's known as the Champs-Élysées of Lisbon. I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. But yeah, that is really sort of the creme de la creme and the prime of Lisbon. So you've got your high-end fashion boutiques there, your Prada, your Gucci, and then very, very high-end restaurants and retail. There's also just very easy accessible, 10 minutes away. And up north, you can't see it on this map, but it's along the river, you get Expo, which is a massive employment hub in Lisbon, a number of jobs there. And again, it's 12 to 15 minute drive. They're actually building also a beautiful promenade, which goes along the river Tagus there. So if you go down onto the promenade, you can go north up to Expo, jump on a scooter or bike or walk if you're feeling active, and then down south into the city centre. It is extremely accessible. And for those who love to travel, 12-minute drive up north to the airport, and you're right at the Lisbon airport. So you're sitting in this beautifully old traditional district, which provides you with sort of peace and tranquility, but you have the whole city on your doorstep, and it's easily accessible. And these really are the things that we believe people are going to look for, you know, post-pandemic, post-COVID. You want this quality of life, this big living space, this outdoor living space, but you also want to be able to easily access all your amenities on a day-to-day basis.
Brilliant, really good overview of the project there, Stacey. Couldn't have put it better myself. And just actually on the COVID side, I think, you know, we've mentioned how well Portugal has dealt with the COVID crisis, and of course the project has pretty much run all the way through the summer. So it's really exemplified the fact that they've dealt with the COVID crisis so well. Yeah,
so they actually didn't stop on site at all. At one stage, I think mid-pandemic, they had 70 staff or something on site. So yeah, they've stuck to timelines. Yeah. And I mean, I've been there when they've started obviously putting the fittings in and stuff, and it looks incredible. Yeah. It's going to be really great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, right. Hopefully that's been pretty useful for you all, and a great overview. And Rosalia and Rakesh over in Dubai produced a really good sense of the golden visa opportunity, and obviously the excellent project we have in Porto. Now we're going to go to some questions, and I can see we've got a lot of questions coming in around the golden visa and obviously the projects. So the first question I'm going to ask, actually, Rakesh, for the golden visa, there's been some talk about perhaps whether there will be changes to the golden visa in terms of whether Lisbon or Porto will be still included on that list for golden visa. Can you comment on that at all, Rakesh, with the latest information?
Yes, I mean, I think just to give that comment, also the question rather, a bit of context as well. Obviously, the program, because of this in excess of 5 billion investment, has been hugely successful. The government wanted to sort of fine-tune the policy, and they had signalled at the start of this year the potential to exclude Lisbon and Porto for the golden visa scheme going forward and reallocate those funds, if you like, to other areas of Portugal. I think the government have until the end of this year to make that change if they're going to make that change. However, obviously COVID has now superseded every government agenda, and I suspect that trying to eliminate Porto and Lisbon, at least our view and our lawyers' view, from the regime going forward is going to be very difficult. If they don't do it by this year end, then it basically goes off the table, notwithstanding the fact the government may have signalled their intention. and it would then have to go back for full debate within Parliament if they wanted to reintroduce that idea. Having said that, obviously the intention has been somewhat signalled, and it has caused some investors to move more quickly than what they would have otherwise, because they're keen to be invested in property that is city centre based, and obviously Porto and Lisbon ticks those boxes heavily.
Okay, great. Next question, again, I'll ask yourself. What are the typical fees associated with the Golden Visa?
Yeah, so the Golden Visa scheme is broken down into two parts. It's the pre-approval stage, where an investor submits all of his own documentation that are required. It's things like bank statements and criminal history, a clean criminal record rather, and some basic KYC information. That then goes off via the lawyer to the immigration authorities, and typically that takes around 4 to 6 weeks to get pre-approval. Only after that stage, once you are aware as an investor that you have been pre-approved for the Golden Visa program, do you actually put any money into the program itself. The typical fees are around 11,000 per investor. That 11,000 covers a mix of governmental fees, which are around 6,000 euros, and then also some of the lawyers' fees and related notary fees, etc. So it's around 11,000 in the first year.
Okay. It's very interesting, actually. One thing I noted in an FT article at the weekend was that in May, I think there were 270 Golden Visa applications, in June 171. These are sort of record amounts, and that really bodes from the confidence we've seen in Portugal over the past few months, how they've dealt with the pandemic, etc. And you know, these sort of things, that the fees are pretty acceptable to the individual. So yeah, so we've definitely seen strong interest just globally in terms of the Golden Visa side. Just a sort of a sub question to that then, in terms of when someone gets the Golden Visa, can they bring other family members along with them to join them?
Yeah, and I think again, this is one of the reasons why the Portuguese scheme has been so popular. It is quite a generous scheme, so you can reunify, bring in family members, including your spouse, and your spouse can be your husband or your wife, or your same-sex marriage, and it's quite open in terms of the inclusion of the types of people that can come in. In terms of your children who are under the age of 18 automatically can be reunified into the main investors application. Children who are above 18 can also be reunified, but provided that they are in full-time education and unmarried. And also the regime is quite generous in that it allows you to reunify your parents and your in-laws if you so wish. So again, the generosity of the scheme, if you like, or the cost efficiency of the scheme really does prove itself when you put it against other Golden Visa regimes around Europe. Right,
okay, that's great. Rosalia, in terms of the Golden Visa process, I mean, how long does that typically take? That's another question we've just got come in.
Sure. So as Rakesh just mentioned, the initial part, which is the application of the Golden Visa, is done online, and this is very important, especially these days, because it allows the applicant to do everything from property purchase to the Golden Visa process remotely. They don't need to travel to Portugal. And that takes from the property purchase until submission and obtaining the pre-approval is taking around 4 to 6 or maximum of 8 weeks. Our actually last files were only 4 weeks. That was very, very quick. Now, the moment that the pre-approval is obtained is when the applicants and the family will have to travel to do the biometrics. And from the time that they schedule the biometrics, that it can be at any suitable time, it will take around 4 months for the cards to be issued.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, go ahead, Rosalia.
Okay, great. So just to summarize, we were saying that the process itself is 2 parts. The initial is the property purchase and the application of the Golden Visa. All of that is made remotely, and is a process of around 4 to maximum 8 weeks to obtain the pre-approval from the time the property is purchased. From that time, its second phase is for the applicant and the family to travel to Portugal and do the biometrics, and from there the cards will be issued. It takes around 4 to 6 months to get the cards issued. They don't need to travel anymore to Portugal. Those cards are collected by the lawyer and sent by courier to their home country. So it's quite easy and convenient process.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Stacey,
No
one for you.
Okay.
There's a lot of questions coming in about, mortgaging. So can I use a mortgage if I want to get Golden Visa 350 or 500K?
No. So the whole thing behind the Golden Visa, the 350 and the 500K, is that it needs to be in cash. So you won't be able to take out a Portuguese mortgage for those purchases.
Right. Okay. Okay. Short and sweet.
Quick,
That's
yeah,
great.
quick
Thank
and
you.
easy.
And Rosalia, another one for yourself in terms of the property here. So if people buy the property in Porto, for example, or indeed in Lisbon, are they able to rent that property out?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually the program is very flexible. So once the investor owns the property, they have full control on what they want to do with it. So they could use for themselves. They can rent it as short term. They can rent it as long term. It's absolutely their own preference and decision.
Great. Okay. And I think I'll end up with 2 questions, and I'll ask Rosalia and then come on to Stacey as the final ones. In terms of the process for securing a unit, what is the process if someone wants to move forward with one of your units at the Porto project?
Okay, so it's very simple process. Overall is 3 steps, and the initial one is, of course, to choose the unit. For that, we have, of course, all the material and price list and the floor plan, etc. So once the unit is chosen, there is a deposit of 10,000 euros that has to be made in order to book that unit, and the signing of a very simple reservation agreement. Second step, it takes around 45 days. So during those 45 days, there is the paperwork to be done by the lawyer in Portugal. They open the account, they do the power of attorney, etc. And it takes in between 30-45 days. Once that is completed, we sign the sales and purchase agreement, and we complete the rest of the payments.
Great. Okay. Very helpful. And Stacey, the same for Bella Vista?
Yeah, it follows a very similar process. Obviously, the difference originally was Bella Vista was an off-plan project, but now with completion coming up October, November, it follows very similar process to that of Porto. So choose your unit, make a reservation payment, do all sort of the DD in the background, the POA with the solicitors, and then sign a CPCV, so essentially the same as exchanging in the UK. And then because you've hit completion by that stage, you'll pay the total amount, and you'll have to obviously pay the total amount to start that GB process.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. Okay, we've come to the end of the webinar here. There's still lots and lots of questions coming in, and certainly we will follow them up after the presentation. I think that's been a really good overview that has been provided for Golden Visa, for Portugal, for the projects on offer here. And clearly there's a lot of interest from clients. So I'd like to thank Rakesh and Rosalia for providing that excellent overview. And
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you on. We will be able to provide all the information on both projects pretty soon after the webinar here, so do keep the questions coming in, and we will answer the questions, of course, afterwards. So again, thank you all for joining. I hope that was very useful for you all, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.